Hi everyone, it's Sarah Altair and this is Mystery Monday. Today I wanted to talk about some very common beginner writing mistakes that you want to avoid. Pegs you as a beginner and your readers won't like it because it'll slow them down reading your story. And if you're looking for traditional publishing, um, editors, agents, they're all gonna go, no. Um, so let's get to it. Here's some beginning mistakes. I know you're a writer and you love writing, but your characters in dialogue, they whisper, they grouse, they complain, they bellow, and they ejaculate. Whoa. Their dialogue, don't do it. Stick to said. When you write said, he said, she said, your readers just kind of gloss over it and they stay in the story and keep going. If you want to express an emotion, for a character that's speaking, just stop there in the dialogue and insert an action that goes along with what that character said. But in the flow of characters speaking to one another, if there's a long conversation, you can indicate the character speaking just so your character doesn't get lost. But still, it's going to be Fred said, you know. So don't get carried away with fancy words. Just he said, she said, and if you really want some emotion in there, describe an action. Okay, so that's one. Just way overriding with dialogue tags. And then another, I call these 8th grader mistakes, like lots of exclamation points or something like that. Another one is using italics for emphasis. You don't need them. You just don't need them. Your readers will get it. And this is even true for when a character is thinking, your point of view character is thinking. You don't need to put those thoughts in italics. The way you write the thought will convey to your reader what the character is thinking. Okay, so another one is, this happens a lot with new writers, so you just kind of have to train yourself to not do this, tempting as it may be, and that's switching heads, changing point of view inside a scene. So, say your detective is questioning somebody who's a potential suspect, and everything in the scene is from your detective's point of view, and all of a sudden you're inside the head of the character that he's questioning. Just don't do it. Just for that one scene, keep it in that one character's perspective. It's okay to have different scenes with different point of view, and this happens a lot in crime novels and mysteries where there may be a scene where you're inside the head of the villain, but that whole scene is inside the head of the villain. Just don't pop between heads inside a scene. Okay. And then, the tough stuff. This is stuff you catch in editing, and that's modifiers, adjectives, and adverbs. So instead of using adverbs, look for strong verbs. and instead of walk quickly, he, now I'm blanking a strong verb, but, the quickly is an adverb, in case you didn't know, and, you want to get rid of those as much as possible. So what you can do when you're in your editing mode is just search for ly, quote ly, and see what comes up. And if you have a lot of adverbs ending in ly, just see if you can at each point stop and change the verb to a stronger verb. So walk quickly, like hustled, and you've eliminated the adverb and gotten rid of that. And then also with adjectives, you want to use those sparingly for the same reason. I know when you want to get detailed into your description, it's tempting to add a lot of adjectives to something you're describing, but keep it brief. And just don't, it's overwriting, so just keep it clean. The cleaner your prose, the easier it is for your readers to read and stay in the story and not get lost in the details. Okay, you're showing off. That's another one. And, readers care about your story. They don't care how smart you are. They don't care how much information you have about a certain topic or subject. So a long paragraph of description of the area where your detective is, for instance, keep it short, keep it pertinent. Make sure it's moving the story forward. The purpose of the story is to tell the story and to engage the readers. It's not to show off how smart you are. And I know it's very tempting when you're a new writer to let people know that you know all about this, whatever it is. But just don't do it. Stay in the story. Keep your readers in the story and make that story flow. You want to be clear. And if you eliminate those info dumps and long descriptions, say it's your favorite valley that you've ever visited in your life and you have this long description. If it's not moving the story forward and it doesn't impact the characters in your story, cut it out. Cut it out. And, okay, those are some really noticeable new writer mistakes that you want to avoid. I know it's hard when you're in the middle of writing to catch all of those, but they're all things that you can work on when you're editing your story. And just like in the dialogue, just make sure that you don't have those very descriptive verbs. Just he said, she said. Really important. You don't need it at that point. It takes a lot of practice to build your craft, and these are all craft things. And as you continue writing, you'll get better at it, and you'll actually start noticing these things as you're writing, so you can quickly change it. You don't want to spend a lot of time editing while you're in writing mode, but if it's something that you notice right away, you can quickly change that sentence while you're there. So you get your clear writing and sentences that make sense and draw the reader forward. Okay, I hope that helps. It's always an undertaking to start, a story and begin your writing path. And these are just quick tips to help you get there faster. All right, I have a couple of questions here. Okay, this is a good question. I've started my mystery and the story keeps slipping away from me. My detective keeps doing things. Oh boy. Does that ever happen? I think every writer will agree with you that your characters will say and do things that you hadn't suspected, even if you have an outline and then, scene by scene, and in this scene this happens, and all of a sudden your character says something and you're just like, whoa. But on the other hand, you want to keep that story moving forward. So I think one of the best things you can do, and I always recommend this for writers at whatever level, is before you start writing, do your 25 to 30 word storyline. Some people call it a log line, about your story. So you want to have the role of your protagonist, and you want to have what his goal is, and you want the obstacle. Those three things in your storyline. So here's an example of Martin Cruz Smith, Gorky Park. Short and sweet. A Moscow homicide detective investigates a bizarre triple murder and runs afoul of the KGB and FBI. So we've got the role, Moscow homicide detective. What he's doing, investigates a bizarre triple murder and the conflict, and runs afoul of the KGB and the FBI. So if you write that short little description of your story, it's kind of your guideline, your beacon as you're writing along, so you're always with that story. It's one of the ways you can keep your story and your characters from wandering off track, is you just bring them back to that guideline beacon of what your story is about. If you want to get more detailed, you can expand that 25 to 30 word storyline and write a paragraph. And in that case, you can add details like your main character's name and possible subplot, a love interest that complicates everything, which is something that happens in Gorky Park, and have that a one paragraph description if that helps you stay on track with your story. So also if you outline your scenes, scene by scene by scene, for your story, you'll find that even when a character does something unexpected, you can keep that there, but kind of nudge the story back to the storyline. And I know it takes some practice, because you don't want to leave those unexpected discoveries that your characters give you, because they're often quite delightful and they add a lot to your story. It's just that you want to make sure that they're tied to the storyline. This can also happen with your sub-characters. All of a sudden, one of them seems super interesting and they have a lot to say, or they're quirky and it's kind of fun to write about them. But if you have that storyline in your head as your guideline, it can kind of keep that character under control. So I know it's easy to get off track with your storyline, and using that storyline, one or two sentence short description can really help you keep on track. Is it something that is pertinent to the story. A lot of new writers get caught up in those little things because they're like, oh, well, it's, expanding my character. It's deepening my reader's knowledge of the character. But that isn't always true. You always want to make it really, tied in to the story. And as you write more, it'll come more easily. But just make sure that you write that a little beginning storyline at the start to keep you focused, so you know immediately if something is pertinent to the story or kind of interesting but not really moving the story forward. It's like, in the old DVDs when they had the deleted scenes. It's like something the director had fun with, but when they went to put the whole thing together, it just wasn't necessary. So that's another way to look at it. Think of it as your deleted scenes. It was fun while it was happening, but it's not working for the story. I hope that helps keeping your story from going off track. Oh, and then here's another question has to do with what we talked about earlier about dialogue. And how do I perk up the dialogue? My characters seem flat. So I think one of the things that happens is just what we were talking about earlier. Instead of perking up the dialogue, somebody will write this, he said vehemently, or, he cried out, blah, blah, blah. So I think the main trick for this is to go back to your character description, your character Bible, everything that you know about your character. And I like to come up with a phrase, or especially for my main characters, certain phrases that they repeat or a way that they deliver something so that it's very recognizable that it's that character that's speaking. So you can give your main character, especially your detective, a list of sayings, things that they do, the way that they respond to things. Do they make excuses? Are their answers clipped? Or do they give long explanations? So I hope that helps you perk up your dialogue. So just don't add those descriptive things, but make the changes within what each character says. If your detective, for example, is speaking with someone who's antagonistic, make that character be antagonistic. Make what he says antagonistic. So if they're whining, use the words to show that they're whining, not saying she whined. And that's kind of the difference. I think a good way, if you're having trouble with this, is to go out somewhere in the world, like a coffee shop, and just listen to conversations and hear how different people speak. And I know one of the exercises I used to give my writing students was to go there, listen to how people speak, and just from what somebody says, make up a quick story about who they are. And then you can reverse that when you're writing your story so that you know who your character is, so that what they say really resonates with who they are. Okay, thank you so much for the questions. I always love asking questions because we always learn from questions. Everybody learns from questions. So I encourage everyone to send me your questions so I can answer them on Mystery Monday. And then I have a friendly reminder for my author friends, people who are already published or who have uh, websites. Make sure your website and email opt-ins are ready for GDPR. It happens in 10 days, and you want to be ready. It takes some time, and most email providers have everything you need to get that up to date. You will need a new privacy policy for your website, so make sure you have all that in place, because you are marketing your books to the world, and you never know where a new site visitor, a new reader is going to come from. And as my old friend used to say, why suffer when you have a choice? And so just get ready, and then when May 25th comes, you'll be all set and you won't even have to think about it. I've heard this a lot in some author groups. Don't think this doesn't apply to you because you're small. So you're not a giant corporation, a car manufacturer. It applies to everyone. And all it takes is one EU citizen to complain about your website. And hi, Sue. Thanks for dropping by. Thanks for the comment. So just make sure that GDPR is ready, you're ready, and you just avoid any situations. It's like renewing your driver's license. Just get it done. Okay. And then I have one announcement I just wanted to let you know that there's so much material in Write a Killer Mystery that I've pushed back the opening date for the course, and that's going to be on July 1st. I'm just kind of swamped with creating slides and doing videos and getting everything ready so you can walk through writing your mystery from start to finish. So thank you very much. All right, that's it for today, and I want to thank everyone for being here. And don't forget, send me a question so I can answer them next Monday. All right, ciao. Happy writing.